The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my sleep. I bolted upright, my heart racing as I fumbled for the bedside lamp. The warm glow illuminated an empty space beside me where Benjamin should have been. "Ben?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet padding across the cold hardwood floor. As I approached the kitchen, I heard hushed voices. Benjamin's low rumble, and another, higher, more insistent. His mother, Mabel. "You can't keep doing this, Mom," Benjamin was saying. "It's not fair to Emma." "Not fair?" Mabel's voice dripped with disdain. "What's not fair is how you've been neglecting me since you married her." I froze, my hand on the doorframe. This wasn't the first time I'd overheard them arguing about me, but something in Mabel's tone sent a chill down my spine. "Emma's my wife," Benjamin said, his voice strained. She deserves nothing," Mabel hissed. "I'm your mother. I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you. And now, when I need you most, you're choosing her?" I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped into the kitchen, blinking in the harsh fluorescent light. Both of them turned to stare at me, Benjamin's face a mask of guilt, Mabel's twisted with anger. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Benjamin ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my gaze. "Mom's not feeling well. She called, and he came to help me." Mabel interrupted, her eyes never leaving my face. Like a good son should. I looked around the kitchen, taking in the shards of glass on the floor, the spilled water. "At 3 a.m? "I'm sorry, Emma," Benjamin said, finally meeting my eyes. "I didn't want to wake you." "You should have," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We're supposed to be a team, remember?" Mabel snorted. "Team? Please, he was my son long before he was your husband." "Mom," Benjamin warned, but the damage was done. I felt something snap inside me. All the times I'd bitten my tongue, all the compromises I'd made, they all came rushing back. "I've tried to be understanding, Mabel. I know you're grieving Dad's death, but this has to stop. You can't keep manipulating Ben like this." Mabel's eyes widened in mock innocence. "Manipulating? I'm not the one who seduced a mama's boy and tried to turn him against his family." "That's enough," Benjamin shouted, startling us both. He turned to his mother, his jaw clenched. "You need to go home, Mom. Now." For a moment, Mabel looked genuinely hurt. Then her face hardened. "Fine, but don't come crying to me when she leaves you, just like all the others." As Mabel stormed out, slamming the front door behind her, I felt the fight drain out of me. I sagged against the counter, suddenly exhausted. Benjamin approached me cautiously. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I never meant for..." I held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't. Just... don't." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "I need some air," I said, grabbing my coat from the hook by the door. "Where are you going?" Benjamin asked, panic edging into his voice. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the man I thought I knew. The man I'd married, believing we'd face everything together. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I can't stay here right now." As I walked out into the chilly pre-dawn air, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The life I'd built with Benjamin, the future I'd imagined, it all seemed to be crumbling around me. And for the first time since we'd said I do, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. The funeral home was suffocating, filled with the cloying scent of lilies and the hushed whispers of mourners. I stood beside Benjamin, my hand on his arm, as people filed past to pay their respects to his father. Benjamin's face was a mask of grief, but it was Mabel who commanded the room, her sobs echoing dramatically through the chapel. "He was such a good man," she wailed, clutching at Benjamin's other arm. "How will I ever manage without him?" I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that she'd been managing just fine for the past year, barely visiting her husband in the nursing home. Instead, I squeezed Benjamin's arm gently. "Do you need a moment?" I whispered. He shook his head, his eyes never leaving his mother. "I can't leave her like this." As the day wore on, I found myself pushed further and further to the periphery. Benjamin was consumed with comforting Mabel, leaving me to handle the practical details of the funeral. By the time we returned home, I was exhausted and emotionally drained. "I'm going to stay with Mom tonight," Benjamin announced as we walked through the door. I froze, my coat half off. "What? Ben, you need rest. You've been with her all day." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing, but now set my teeth on edge. "She shouldn't be alone, Emma. She's devastated." "And what about you?" I asked, my voice rising. "Your father just died. Don't you think we should be together?" Benjamin's eyes flashed with anger. "My mother needs me. I can't believe you're being so selfish right now." The word hit me like a slap. Selfish? I've been nothing but supportive. I've planned the funeral, dealt with the paperwork, all while you've been... "Been what?" he challenged. "Taking care of my grieving mother?" I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "Ben, I understand she's hurting, but so are you. So am I. We're supposed to lean on each other in times like this. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I married in his eyes. Then Mabel's voice rang out from the driveway, shrill and demanding. Benjamin, I'm waiting. Just like that, the moment was gone. Benjamin grabbed his coat and headed for the door. I'll be back in the morning, he said, not meeting my gaze. As the door closed behind him, I sank onto the couch, feeling more alone than I had in years. How had we gotten here? When had I become the outsider in my own marriage? The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and family dinners where I felt like an unwelcome guest. Mabel had moved into our guest room temporarily, her presence a constant reminder of my growing irrelevance in Benjamin's life. One evening I returned home to find them huddled over papers at the kitchen table. They looked up guiltily as I entered. What's going on? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Benjamin cleared his throat. We were just discussing Dad's will. There are some complications. Mabel's eyes glittered with triumph. Benjamin's going to be taking over the family business. It's what his father would have wanted. I stared at my husband in disbelief. The business in Florida, the one we agreed you wouldn't touch because it would mean moving away from our life here? Benjamin wouldn't meet my eyes. Things have changed, Emma. Mom needs me, and the business needs someone to run it. And what about what I need? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, I realized with startling clarity that I already knew the answer. In Benjamin's new world order, my needs didn't factor in at all. As I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving them to their plans, I felt something inside me harden. The life I thought we were building together was slipping away, and I was faced with a choice: fight for my marriage or accept that the man I married was gone. Either way, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The house felt like a prison. Everywhere I turned, Mabel's presence loomed large, her knickknacks on the shelves, her perfume lingering in the air. I found myself retreating to the spare room more and more, desperate for a space that was still mine. One afternoon, as I scrolled mindlessly through my phone, an ad caught my eye. Win a luxury spa getaway. Without thinking, I clicked and entered. What are you doing? Benjamin's voice startled me. I quickly locked my phone. Nothing important. He frowned, hovering in the doorway. Mom's asking for you. She wants help planning Dad's memorial. I bit back a sigh. I'll be right there. As I followed Benjamin downstairs, I couldn't help but wonder when I'd become a stranger in my own home. The next few weeks passed in a blur of tension and barely concealed resentment. I threw myself into entering contests. Any distraction from the growing chasm in my marriage was welcome. One evening, as I prepared dinner, Mabel's voice drifted from the living room. Benjamin, darling, have you thought more about the Florida house? I froze, straining to hear Benjamin's response. I don't know, Mom. It's a big decision. Emma and I have a life here. My heart leapt at his words, but Mabel's reply crushed that flicker of hope. Emma will adjust. She's young. She can find work anywhere. This is about family, Benjamin, your father's legacy. I waited for Benjamin to defend me, to remind his mother that I was family too. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Unable to bear it any longer, I stormed into the living room. Don't I get a say in this? They both looked up, startled. Mabel recovered first, her face a mask of innocence. Oh, Emma, dear, we were just discussing. I heard what you were discussing, I snapped. My entire life, apparently. Benjamin stood, reaching for me. Emma, please, nothing's been decided yet. I stepped back out of his reach. Hasn't it? Because it seems like every decision lately has been made without me. Mabel's eyes narrowed. Now, Emma, don't be dramatic. Benjamin's just trying to do what's best for the family. I am his family, I shouted, years of pent-up frustration finally boiling over. Or at least I thought I was. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Benjamin looked torn, his gaze darting between his mother and me. Of course your family, he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. I felt something inside me break. Am I? Because lately it feels like I'm just an inconvenience, an obstacle in your perfect mother-son relationship. Mabel gasped, clutching her chest dramatically. How dare you? After everything I've done for this family? Enough, Benjamin roared, startling us both. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more lost than I'd ever seen him. I can't do this right now. Without another word, he grabbed his keys and stormed out, leaving Mabel and me staring at each other in stunned silence. As the front door slammed shut, my phone pinged. Grateful for the distraction, I glanced at the screen. My heart skipped a beat as I read the message. Congratulations! You've won our luxury spa getaway for 2. In that moment, staring at my phone while my mother-in-law glared daggers at me, I made a decision. I was done being the understanding wife, the accommodating daughter-in-law. It was time to put myself first. "I'm going out," I announced, grabbing my purse. Mabel sputtered, "But Benjamin can deal with his own mess for once," I finished, heading for the door. As I stepped outside, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. Something had to change, and it had to change now. I found myself at the local diner, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The weight of my wedding ring felt heavy on my finger, a constant reminder of the promises we'd made and broken. As I stared out the window, memories of past relationships flooded my mind. There was Mark, my high school sweetheart, whose jealousy had suffocated me. Then came David, charming but unreliable, always putting his needs before mine. And finally, Thomas, who'd seemed perfect until I caught him cheating. Each failed relationship had left its mark, shaping the woman I'd become. I thought Benjamin was different. He'd been kind, supportive, everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. But now? "Refill, hon?" The waitress's voice jolted me from my reverie. I nodded, managing a weak smile. As she poured the coffee, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me looked tired, defeated. When had I let myself become this person? My phone buzzed insistently. Benjamin's name flashed on the screen, along with a dozen missed calls. I silenced it, not ready to face him yet. Instead, I pulled out the spa resort brochure I'd printed earlier. 2 tickets to paradise, a chance to escape the suffocating tension at home. But as I stared at the glossy photos, a realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't want to go with Benjamin. The thought was so shocking, so contrary to everything I'd been fighting for, that I nearly laughed out loud. But the more I turned it over in my mind, the more right it felt. When was the last time Benjamin and I had truly connected? When had he last chosen me over his mother? As if summoned by my thoughts, the diner's door chimed and Benjamin walked in. His eyes scanned the room frantically before landing on me. Relief washed over his face, quickly replaced by anger. "Emma," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What the hell? I've been worried sick." I met his gaze steadily. I needed some time to think. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. "About what? Emma, I know things have been tough lately, but..." "Tough?" I interrupted, my voice low but intense. "Benjamin, things haven't just been tough. They've been impossible. Ever since your father died, it's like I don't exist anymore. Everything is about your mother, the business, your family's legacy. Where do I fit into all of that?" Benjamin's face crumpled. "You're my wife. Of course you fit in." "Do I?" I challenged, pulling out the spa brochure. "Because I won this, 2 tickets to a luxury resort, and my first thought wasn't excitement about going with you. It was relief at the idea of getting away from you." The words hung between us, heavy and undeniable. Benjamin stared at the brochure, then back at me, his eyes wide with hurt and confusion. "Emma, I didn't realize. I've been trying to balance everything, and I thought you understood." "I've been understanding for months." I cut him off. "I've been patient, supportive, everything a good wife should be. But I can't do it anymore, Ben. I won't." He reached across the table, grasping my hands. "Tell me how to fix this. Please, Emma, I love you." I looked into his eyes, searching for the man I'd fallen in love with, but all I saw was a stranger, torn between his wife and his mother, unable to fully commit to either. Taking a deep breath, I pulled my hands away and stood up. "I think I need more than just a few hours away, Ben. I need time to figure out if this marriage is even worth saving." The look of devastation on his face nearly broke my resolve. But as I walked out of the diner, my steps felt lighter than they had in months. For the first time in a long time, I was choosing myself, and it felt like the beginning of something new. I stared at the email in disbelief, reading it for the 3rd time to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. "Congratulations! You've won our exclusive spa resort getaway for 2. The irony wasn't lost on me. Just when I decided I needed time away from Benjamin, fate handed me the perfect opportunity. My finger hovered over the delete button. Part of me wanted to erase this complication, to continue on the path of separation I'd set for myself. But another part, a part I thought I'd silenced, whispered of second chances. Before I could overthink it, I forwarded the email to Benjamin with a simple message. "We need to talk." His response was almost immediate. "I'm on my way." As I waited, pacing our living room, I couldn't help but remember the early days of our marriage. The laughter, the shared dreams, the feeling that we could conquer anything together. When had that slipped away? The front door opened and Benjamin stepped in, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shirt wrinkled. He'd clearly been sleeping on the couch at his mother's house. "Emma," he breathed, relief evident in his voice. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here." I gestured to the couch, maintaining my distance. We need to discuss this spa trip. He nodded, sinking onto the cushions. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm hoping maybe this could be a chance for us to reconnect. I felt my resolve wavering. This was the Benjamin I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, open, putting our relationship first. But could I trust it? What about your mother? I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Won't she need you? Benjamin flinched. I've talked to her, explained that I need to focus on my marriage. She didn't take it well. I raised an eyebrow. And I told her she needs to respect my decision, he said firmly. Emma, I know I've been blind to how my actions have affected you. I've taken you for granted, and I'm so sorry. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back. Words are easy, Ben. It's actions that matter. He stood, crossing the room to stand in front of me. Then let me show you. Come on this trip with me. Let me prove that you're my priority, that our marriage is worth fighting for. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to. But the memory of all the broken promises, the nights spent feeling invisible in my own home, held me back. I don't know if I can, I whispered. Benjamin's face fell, but he nodded. I understand. I've hurt you, and I know trust has to be earned. But Emma, please, give me this chance. If after the trip you still feel like our marriage can't be saved, I'll respect your decision. The sincerity in his eyes made my heart ache. This was the moment, the crossroads I'd been hurtling towards for months. I could walk away now, protect myself from further hurt. Or I could take a leap of faith, give our love one last chance. My phone buzzed, a reminder popping up. The spa reservation needed to be confirmed within the hour, or we'd lose our spot. Benjamin watched me, hope and fear warring in his expression. Emma? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision on my shoulders. This wasn't just about a vacation. It was about the future of our marriage, about whether the love we'd built was strong enough to weather the storms we'd faced. Okay, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. We'll go. But Benjamin, this is it, our last chance. Relief flooded his face, followed quickly by determination. I won't let you down. Not again. As I turned to confirm the reservation, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a precipice. Whether this trip would lead to reconciliation or the final nail in our marriage's coffin, one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The morning of our spa trip arrived, and I felt a mix of hope and trepidation as I packed my bags. Benjamin had been attentive and loving in the days leading up to our getaway, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As I zipped up my suitcase, I heard Benjamin's phone buzz repeatedly downstairs. Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept down the stairs, pausing when I heard his hushed voice. Mom, please, we've been over this, Benjamin was saying, his tone exasperated. I'm going on this trip with Emma. It's important for our marriage. My heart sank as I heard Mabel's shrill voice through the speaker. But Benjamin, I need you here. The lawyer called about your father's estate. This is family business. I held my breath, waiting for Benjamin's response. This was it, the moment of truth. I'm sorry, Mom, but Emma is my family too. We'll deal with the estate when I get back. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As I turned to head back upstairs, my foot caught on the edge of the carpet. I stumbled, catching myself on the banister with a loud thud. Benjamin whirled around, his eyes wide. Emma, how long have you been there? I straightened up, meeting his gaze. Long enough. I'm glad you're choosing us, Ben. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Of course, let's get going, shall we? The drive to the spa resort was tense, filled with stilted conversation and long silences. As we pulled into the parking lot, I couldn't shake the feeling that this trip was make or break for us. We checked in and were shown to our luxurious suite. As I unpacked, Benjamin's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, his face paling. Everything okay? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. He nodded quickly. Just Mom again. I'll deal with it later. But as the day wore on, Benjamin grew increasingly distracted. During our couple's massage, he kept checking his phone. At dinner, he barely touched his food, his eyes darting to the exit. Finally, as we returned to our room, I'd had enough. Ben, what's going on? You've been on edge all day. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm sorry, Emma. It's just, there's a lot going on with Dad's estate. Mom's struggling to handle it all. I felt my heart hardening. And you think you need to rescue her, don't you? Benjamin's silence was all the answer I needed. I turned away, fighting back tears. I can't believe this. We're supposed to be reconnecting, and all you can think about is your mother. Joe, that's not fair, he protested. She needs me. And I don't? I whirled around, anger replacing hurt. When do I get to be your priority, Benjamin? His face hardened. You know what? Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe we should just go home. The words hit me like a physical blow. Go home? To what? A marriage where I'm always second best. Benjamin's eyes flashed. If that's how you feel, maybe we shouldn't be married at all. The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging between us. I stared at him, searching for any sign of the man I'd married. But all I saw was a stranger, torn between his wife and his mother, unable to fully commit to either. Is that what you want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. A divorce? He didn't answer immediately, and in that hesitation I found my answer. Fine, I said, grabbing my suitcase. If that's what you want, you can have it, but don't expect me to stick around and watch you throw away our marriage for your mother's approval. As I stormed out of the room, leaving Benjamin calling after me, I felt something inside me break. The dream of reconciliation shattered, replaced by a cold, hard reality. Our marriage was over. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to fight for it anymore. I stumbled out of the resort, my vision blurred by tears. The cool night air hit me like a slap, jolting me back to reality. What had just happened? How had our last chance at reconciliation turned into the final nail in our marriage's coffin? My phone buzzed incessantly, Benjamin calling, no doubt. I silenced it, unable to bear hearing his voice. Instead, I called a cab and waited in the shadows, my mind racing. As I climbed into the taxi, a sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in months, I felt clarity. I knew what I had to do. Where to, miss? The driver asked. I hesitated for only a moment. The nearest hotel, please. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose. I checked out of the hotel and headed straight for Benjamin's house. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Mabel's car parked out front. Of course, she was here. Taking a deep breath, I walked in. The sound of hushed voices from the kitchen stopped abruptly as I entered. Emma! Benjamin exclaimed, jumping to his feet. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his hair a mess. I've been worried sick. I held up a hand, silencing him. I'm not here to talk, Benjamin. I'm here to pack my things. Mabel's eyes narrowed. Now, Emma, don't be hasty. Every marriage has its rough patches. This isn't a rough patch, I interrupted, my voice steady. This is the end. Benjamin's face crumpled. Emma, please. We can work this out. I'll do better, I promise. I shook my head, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. It's too late for promises, Ben. You've made your choice time and time again, and now I'm making mine. As I moved towards the stairs, Benjamin grabbed my arm. Emma, wait. I yanked my arm away, anger flaring. Don't touch me. You lost that right when you chose your mother over me for the last time. Mabel gasped dramatically. How dare you? After everything we've done for you. You've done nothing for me, I spat, years of resentment boiling over. You've manipulated and controlled Benjamin, and he's let you. Well, I'm done being the third wheel in my own marriage. I stormed upstairs, throwing clothes and personal items into a suitcase. Benjamin followed, pleading and apologizing, but his words washed over me like white noise. As I zipped up my bag, I turned to face him one last time. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce proceedings. His face paled. Divorce? Emma, please, can't we just take some time apart, think things through? I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of calm. I've done nothing but think for months, Benjamin. I've given you chance after chance. I'm done. I brushed past him, heading downstairs. Mabel stood at the bottom, her face a mask of faux concern. Emma, dear, you're being irrational. Family should stick together. You're right, Mabel, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Family should stick together. It's a shame Benjamin never realized I was his family, too. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope, handing it to Benjamin. Here, consider yourself served. His hands shook as he opened it, eyes widening as he read the divorce papers. Emma, no. But I was already walking out the door. As I threw my suitcase in the trunk of my car, I heard Benjamin calling after me. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I heard Mabel's voice, shrill and demanding, and my determination solidified. I got in the car and started the engine, catching one last glimpse of Benjamin in the rearview mirror. He stood in the doorway, looking lost and broken, with Mabel hovering behind him like a vulture. As I drove away, leaving behind the shattered remains of my marriage, I felt a strange mix of grief and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was mine to choose. 6 months after I walked out of Benjamin's life, I found myself standing on a sun-drenched beach in Hawaii, watching the waves crash against the shore. My parents lounged nearby, their laughter carried on the breeze. This vacation, a gift to myself after finalizing the divorce, felt like a rebirth. The path to this moment hadn't been easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, days when the weight of my decision felt unbearable. But with each passing week, I grew stronger, more certain of my choice. As I dug my toes into the warm sand, my phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. Final papers signed. It's official. A mix of emotions washed over me, relief, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of freedom. I was no longer Benjamin's wife, no longer Mabel's daughter-in-law. I was just Emma, and for the first time in years, that felt like enough. "Emma, honey?" My mother's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Are you all right?" I turned to her, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "I'm more than all right, Mom. I'm free." She squeezed my hand, understanding in her eyes. My parents had been my rock through this ordeal, never judging, always supporting. Their love had reminded me of what real family should feel like. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The contests I'd entered as a distraction had become a lifeline, leading me to rediscover parts of myself I'd forgotten. The spa tickets that were meant to save my marriage had instead given me the clarity to end it. My father joined us, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Penny for your thoughts, kiddo?" I leaned into his embrace, feeling a surge of gratitude. I was just thinking about how different my life is now. A year ago, I never would have imagined being here, being happy. "You've always been stronger than you give yourself credit for," he said, pride evident in his voice. As we walked back to our hotel, I felt a sense of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. The future, once so terrifying in its uncertainty, now seemed full of possibility. Back in my room, I found myself drawn to the balcony. The night air was warm, filled with the scent of plumeria. In the distance, I could hear the faint strains of music from a luau. On impulse, I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. It rang twice before going to voicemail. "Benjamin," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I just wanted to say thank you. Not for the years we spent together, though some of them were good, but for showing me what I don't want in a partner, in a life. I hope you find happiness. I really do. But I've found mine, and it doesn't include you or your mother. Goodbye, Benjamin." As I ended the call, I felt the last piece of my old life fall away. There were no more loose ends, no more what-ifs, just the open road of my future, waiting to be explored. I thought about the woman I was when I first met Benjamin, hopeful, naive, desperate for love. And I thought about the woman I was now, stronger, wiser, knowing that the most important love was the one I had for myself. As I gazed out at the starlit sky, I made a silent promise to that younger version of myself. I would never again settle for less than I deserved. I would never again dim my light to make someone else shine brighter. The breeze picked up, carrying with it the sound of laughter from the beach below. Without hesitation, I changed into a flowing sundress and headed out. The night was young, and so was I, in spirit, in hope, in the joy of new beginnings. As I stepped onto the sand, feeling the warmth beneath my feet and the endless possibilities stretching out before me, I knew one thing for certain. The best chapter of my life was just beginning. And this time, I would be the author of my own story.